Everyone stare at the camera.
Here we go.
Always been a get better mentality every day, grow every day, be a better leader every day, be a better quarterback every day. And when that rent's due, I don't plan on missing no payments. So it's work.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of All About the Birds, the weekly report, the flagship show on the All About the Birds network. We are brought to you and sponsored by lots of great sponsors. We're going to spotlight the first main one right off the bat, Manscaped. Your balls and your wives will thank you. Absolutely. Use AAT Birds for 20% off and free shipping at checkout, manscaped.com. Again, your balls will thank you. The crew is all here. And as you can see by the screen, we've got a fifth member. But we've got Jeff Warren, NFL Jeff, Johnny Uleka, who's always here, Chip Keggy above me, and our special guest. I've had the privilege of being on his show several times, Jeff Warren, not to be confused with Jeff Warner down below. Jeff Warren from the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast, the longest running Philadelphia sports podcast in the region. And I got to welcome you, Jeff. But I got to ask you, is that true? Is it definitely the longest running podcast there is?
Yeah, nobody has said that it's not at this point, so I think that it is. We've been going for over 8 years. Yes, exactly. Over 8 years strong at this point. Actually, 8 years, 2 months that we've been doing it consistently on a weekly basis. I think we've missed 3 or 4 weeks total due to like holidays or people getting married and some illness and stuff like that. But yeah, we've been going strong. 8.5 years, weekly show. We also do our Eagles post-game podcast show during the course of the season. We have the Table Talk show over on our Patreon platform, patreon.com/Philadelphia PST. And we do an opposition territory show every now and then where we take a look at another team in the NFL, dissecting that. So, yeah, we've been doing this for a long time, man.
And is there a set schedule to your podcast, and where can they find, all our listeners find your podcast?
Yeah, you can find it on just about any podcast platform, whether it's, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all podcasting platforms. You can follow us on Twitter at Philadelphia PST. Our website's PhiladelphiaSportsTable.com. And, you can search us out and subscribe. We're a 4 for 4. We talk about all 4 teams, not just Eagles, Sixers, Phillies, Flyers, Eagles, all of them. We even get into some college athletics as well. We've been talking this week. We're talking about the Temple football program and their hopeful resurgence at some point in the future. So it's 4 for 4, man.
See, you're on the wrong network. It's 5 for 5.
Oh, it's 5 for 5.
Sorry. We cover the Union as well on this network.
Exactly.
Here.
That's my fault. My co-host Len is a huge Union fan, and he's like, Jeff, are we going to start talking about some Union stuff? Because pretty good team here in Philly, and I stink. I can't. I try, guys. I try like the World Cup every year. I try every time the World Cup is on to get into. I just can't get into it. So it's my fault. That's why I said 4 for 4, but it should be 5 for 5. You're absolutely right, Phil.
Guys, you have any questions for Jeff about what he does before we dive into our great agenda for this evening, getting all his thoughts on this offseason?
No, I'm super appreciative that you're joining us tonight. I mean, it's going to be good. We listen to your stuff, and it's fantastic. There's a reason why you've had the success for all these years.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it, man. And it's really cool to be on with you guys because, like, the one thing you guys do extremely well is have that passion underneath what you are talking about. There are honestly, we know the podcast market's pretty saturated, and there are a lot of individuals out there who. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think there are as many individuals who are as passionate as others. And you guys certainly fall into that passionate category. So that's why it's great to be here.
Well, let's dive right in because obviously the four of us can only talk about the same topics, so many weeks in a row before it just becomes nauseating and all. So now we're here to bring our audience, if they haven't listened to you before, your opinions on everything that's been going on this offseason. And I know we all love to talk about the draft. Johnny hosts his draft show, during draft season. So we want to get first off, right out off the gate, your thoughts on Howie and the job he did this draft. Devontae Smith first overall, and all that great stuff that happened draft weekend.
Well, with Devontae Smith being the right pick at number 10, I think you have to say absolutely yes. He was definitely the right pick. Listen, guys, this team, and for every Eagles fan listening out there, this team desperately needed a playmaker when basically the playmaker on the team on offense for years was Zach Ertz. And now we have Devontae Smith, and he is exactly that. He is a playmaker. In fact, I'm going to divert just for a second here. When Pro Football Focus did their top 50 list recently, and yes, I know it's Pro Football Focus, so you take it with a grain of salt, but there wasn't one Philadelphia Eagle named in the top 50. Nope. And I think Devontae Smith is going to make that list in the future. In fact, potentially being a top 20 player in the entire league. It was the absolute right pick because he is a playmaker. He has proven himself time and time again throughout his collegiate career, and I think it's going to translate well to the NFL.
So Johnny Higgins, he's been on this. He's a buddy of mine. He's been on this. He wanted Justin Fields. He has not settled on Jalen Hurts. But let me ask you this, going back to the Devontae Smith pick for a second. How do you see his size translating? Because he is very small for an NFL player. Yeah. Do you see him bulking up and that affecting his game? Or do you see him being successful at, where he is currently at?
I don't see him bulking up. I think there are certain frames that we see in the NFL where you're going to look at a guy and say, okay, he's going to be able to gain 30 pounds if he's a defensive tackle. Or you see a running back, and you know what? He may be able to put on an extra 10 pounds based on his workout regimen. But when you look at a frame like Devontae Smith, I don't think he's going to be putting on much weight at all, quite frankly. But I think he's a smart enough player to be able to protect his body. And I think he's going to be with coaches, and that's the hope, that going to be with coaches that are going to teach him even more how to do that in the future. I think he's a very smart player. Didn't have much of an injury history when he was at Alabama. And again, I think all of this is going to translate in a positive way over to the NFL.
Yeah, and I love Devontae Smith. I like what he brings. And for me, I just feel like, you get that playmaker. We begged for it. And last year, Jalen Reagor, you had Jalen Reagor, and you thought he was going to be he just wasn't used the way you thought he was going to be used. Yeah. How do you think that Devontae Smith basically using him in this offense? I know it's different. It's totally different than what Doug Peterson ran. But what do you think with Nick Sirianni, a guy that's been with receivers?
It's a really, really interesting question, Johnny, because I look at Nick Sirianni, and part of me has this entire offseason has felt indifferent about him because he still really hasn't necessarily proven all that much in the NFL when you look at the entire body of work. I think there's obviously some positive things that we've seen from him from an assistant standpoint. He seems to have a lot of energy, pretty good personality from what we've seen so far. But, I kind of feel like this is a hire again where Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman thinking that they're going to be able to mold the next head coach in the manner that they want. And I don't really think that's necessarily a positive and proactive strategy for them to take, and I don't mean to divert too much, but as it pertains to Nick Sirianni and how he's going to be able to coach the wide receivers, I think that Devontae Smith is a special talent. And aside from the coaching, I really do believe that we are getting a wide receiver and a playmaker who is actually going to get us 1,000 yards in an NFL league where passing is so important and critical to the success of teams. We haven't had how many times have we all said it? We haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Jeremy Maclin. That's a really, really long time ago. So, listen, again, I'm indifferent with regard to Sirianni because I just don't know how he's going to be in terms of his head coaching strategies. But this also goes to another important foundation of where this Eagles team is heading, guys. And I'm not sure how far you've actually dove into this on your show. We've talked about it on the Philadelphia Sports Table, is that relationships and the deterioration of those relationships that happened over the period of the past few years. And I'm sorry if I'm like monopolizing time talking about this, but I do.
What we want. We can't talk about this anymore. We want your opinions and thoughts.
I think it's important.
You give us something we can argue with you about.
Well, I mean, I think it's important for us all to realize that the deterioration of the relationships within the front office and how that filtered down to the coaches and then filtered down to the players, that's still a huge concern for me because the two individuals are still at the top. They haven't moved in Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. Of course, an owner's not going to be moving, but and Howie Roseman's going to be there for the next few years at least. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie has signaled that he is going to be there. So how does the relationship manifest with Nick Sirianni, with the offensive coordinator, with the defensive coordinator, and Jonathan Gannon? Like, how does it all mesh and the relationships come together? That, I think, is what the foundation of the future is really going to be for this team. And then how that trickles down to the players. That might have been a long kind of answer, Johnny, to your question. I don't even know if I answered your question. But I just think that there's so many different moving parts here. And I think we all know that. But I think that the underbelly, the relationships that were deteriorated over time, I'm just concerned that that's going to potentially happen again.
Yeah, and you touched on Sirianni a little bit about your opinion on Sirianni. And look, here on the show when he was first hired, it was like one of those things where it just had you scratching your head because we totally agreed with you. We agreed that they were trying to mold to the yes man, the man that we sort of thought Doug Peterson was going to be when he first came in here, because that was a guy that they just signed out left field because it was an Andy Reid disciple. He gave a good word for him. So
yeah.
With them going with Sirianni, what I understand you elaborate on him a bit, but do you feel he was the right choice to be the head coach? Is there another name out there that you felt that the Eagles should have maybe targeted, or is he one of those guys that like in a couple of years are going to be saying they need to make a change?
We didn't know what was going to happen with Doug Peterson, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Jeff, like you said, he wasn't even the second choice, and there was a Super Bowl win, and that Super Bowl title came to Philadelphia because of very magical special moments. And I don't mean to sound corny about it, but it was magical moments that happened throughout that season. Should the Eagles have take logic and reason, and let's put it in front of our faces here. Should the Eagles have won that Super Bowl with logic and reason in our faces? I don't know. I probably not, but they did. And I think there's something to be said for the coaching at that time. But unfortunately, and again, I go back to the deterioration of the relationships that happened. Is Nick Sirianni going to be in a Tuesday meeting room with Jeffrey Lurie as Doug Peterson was? I hope not. Being analyzed in terms of his play calling from the game before. I hope that's not the case at all, because if it is, we are in for the same type of situation from a relationship standpoint. And it doesn't matter how good Nick Sirianni is calling games, because inevitably, like that's what it's going to be coming down to, the relationships. So from all I've seen so far, Jeff, I think Nick Sirianni was a good choice because he brings a lot of energy to a team I think that desperately does need some energy.
Will that energy, though, translate? I think it's going to translate. We have two big mixes. We've got a lot of really young players and a lot of really older veteran players. Nobody really in that middle, in the prime of their career. Will that energy translate to those older guys, the Lane Johnsons, the Brandon Brooks, the Jason Kelce's, those guys that you need to carry this team leadership player-wise? Will Nick Sirianni's, youthful energy, if you want to call it that, potentially rub them the wrong way if he calls them out or does things differently? I don't know. That's something that is concerning to me.
That's an interesting question, Phil, because I think to myself, how long is it going to take for the players to buy in. Younger players, older players. That phrase buy in is extremely important. And not just this season, but next season as well. Guys, this is a developmental season. And for Eagles fans, they need to realize that this is a developmental season.
Well, that's good, because I don't want to hear the word rebuild, because it's not a rebuild.
No,
it's a retool. It's development.
Development.
It's good choice of words right there.
Right. Because, in the end, what I want to see from this new and young coaching staff with new and young players and the older players, I want a coaching staff that's going to be hungry. I do. And I want the team to buy into that hunger. But being hungry, as we know, can also be a detriment if they allow obstacles, even weekly failures, to get in their head too much during the season. I don't want them to be dismayed by a season of real growing pains, which are going to, which we could probably see, and we are going to see on both sides of the ball. So I think the buy-in is really important and critical from the players in terms of these coaches here.
So let me kind of follow up on that, because we have all been saying it is a developmental season.
Yes.
We can't go if we don't make the playoffs this year. It's not that we failed, but again, we're in Philadelphia. So, in your opinion, what constitutes a successful season? What tangible proof are you looking for to say this season was successful?
I'm looking to see 2018, 2019, 2020 draft picks doing better. That may sound simplistic, but I want them to do better on the field. I want some of those individuals to become leaders in the locker room, leaders on the field too. That's development, because when you have the leadership there, whether it is behind the scenes in the locker room or whether it's on the field, that is real development right there. And it's sometimes not just about the analytics necessarily, but I'd like to see more yards from Jalen Reagor this year. I'd like to see Dallas. I'm probably going to get into Dallas Goedert a little bit later, but Dallas Goedert still needs to take another step as well, being that he was in the 2018 draft. So there's Miles Sanders as well. There's development that we're going to need to see from him. Nick Sirianni is going to be throwing the ball to him. He needs to catch it. And he needs to make something of those opportunities. So I want to see these draft picks, these younger guys, just take that next step in terms of yards and just being able to really develop into some sort of leaders on this team.
See, and that's a really good point, because that brings up something that, was on that, list of things is 2020 rookies. This is basically their rookie year all over again.
Yeah.
They didn't have camps. They didn't have OTAs. They didn't even get into the building till a couple weeks before the season. So we might say that Jalen Reagor needs to take the next step, or whether you want to go to later draft picks in 2020, Kayvon Wallace or Davian Taylor, or any of these guys. This is their first time having a full off season.
Yeah.
Do you think, it's kind of like having two rookie classes at the same time, correct?
It really is. And if there is a second-year player here that from last year's draft that I really am hoping kind of changes the outlook of the team in a way, and that's Kayvon Wallace. I'm really hoping that he is going to produce some more structure to the safety position overall here in the future. Kayvon Wallace, he only played in 18% of snaps as a rookie behind Jalen Mills. But look, he's a hard hitter. He may be given a starting job, actually, since Anthony Harris is probably going to be playing the role of free safety. He's pretty much got that locked down. Rodney McLeod, who knows what we're going to get from him as he recovers from his ACL injury. So, with a full year of development under Kayvon Wallace's belt and an off season of competition, he could come out swinging. And I would expect that from him, because I loved him at Clemson. If you go back, you look at whether it's tape at Clemson or you look at some of the interviews, so beyond impressive he was when he was matched up on tight ends consistently. And realistically, I think Kayvon Wallace is one of the few long-term options the Eagles have at that position. So it would make sense to give him as much defensive exposure as possible here moving forward in this 2021 season.
Right, and I definitely agree, and especially I thought he was one of the absolute steals of the draft, because I'm a sucker for a Clemson safety. What would it coming? I mean, it's worked for us in the past pretty well.
Right.
Just saying. So let me throw a different name at you. We have each had our opportunity taking absolute shots at this guy. JJ Arcega-Whiteside. What are we doing? What? All right. So you're done with the J-Jaw experiment.
Get him out of here.
I am. Listen, after last year, when coaches were hyping him up during training camp, and we were all expecting something from him. We were all expecting, again, going back to the development aspect of what this team is. Even last year, we were expecting more development from J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and he wasn't able to get on the field. And when he was on the field, he wasn't able to make any opportunities that were given to him. I'm not the biggest J.J. Arcega-Whiteside fan. I was so very hopeful when they drafted him in the second round. I'm thinking, all right, they know something that we don't. And again, I think it was perhaps the front office outthinking themselves. And of course, we know from reports that he was very much liked by Jeffrey Lurie. But I think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has possibly worn out his welcome at this point. Phil, it doesn't seem like you agree.
I don't. I mean, I wrote an article last year that he was going to have a breakout year last year. It didn't happen.
I remember you talked about that on my show. Yeah,
I'm wrong. Okay, I'm wrong all the time. But on the flip side of the equation, we do have a coaching staff that specializes in developing wide receivers.
It's a good point.
He's tall. He's big. You know, he had a really solid college career. He didn't just forget how to play football. So maybe this coaching staff does something with him. But that brings up you guys all saying bye-bye to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Ryan checking in with a question. Is there any surprise cuts that you could see happening this offseason or before the season starts? You know, Jeff, I'll let you answer it first.
That's a really good question. A surprising cut on a team that is so very thin in so many positions. I mean, I would say a surprising cut given where they want to take the offensive line. If they were to get rid of somebody like Jack Driscoll, which I don't think that they would do, or if they got rid of Isaac Seumalo, which I don't think they would. I think any type of cut to the offensive line that's not obvious to us would be very, very surprising to me. Because in the end, folks, let's be real. The way that you have a productive offense is by having a solid foundation on your offensive line. If you don't have a solid foundation on the line, you're not doing anything in this league. I don't care if you have Tyreek Hill and if you have Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. If you don't have a decent offensive line, which we saw in the Super Bowl,
exactly,
you're not doing anything. So to answer that question, I would say if we have multiple, for whatever reason, offensive linemen that are cut, that would surprise me.
So since we're sticking with the young guys here,
yeah,
there's going to be a battle at left tackle, right?
Yes.
Who do you think should? Who do you think will win the job at left tackle?
I think it is going to be, all things being equal, where they are right now. When we are recording this, June 30th at night.
I was like, what's the date? I was double checking the date.
We're heading into July. All things being equal right now, I think it's Jordan Mailata's. And I do, because he has proven that he can be coached. He's proven that he can develop quickly. And I think those two aspects give him the edge over somebody like Andre Dillard, who's unbelievably disappointed.
I'm throw a question to you, Jeff, and the team, because this brought up instant question came into my head.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about Arcega-Whiteside. We're talking about Andre Dillard. We've seen and we heard from last year that Howie has say over the roster and has say over the guys that dress on Sunday. The other thing we know about Howie is he doesn't like to quickly admit mistakes.
Right.
And Arcega-Whiteside was obviously a mistake. Dillard may turn into a mistake. But on the flip side of the equation, him not admitting to mistakes, will he put his hand on it and say, Sirianni, you've got to make sure Arcega-Whiteside makes the team. You've got to start Andre Dillard. Is that guy? You can answer it, but everybody can answer it. Is that a potential thing? Because that's what we heard happen last year with Doug Peterson. One of those riffs where he had a lot to say.
I think that's an interesting question, Phil, because what you're talking about is, and I think this correlates with what we saw during the offseason, potentially with the draft too, is what kind of tone does Howie want to give and present, not just to his coaches and to the players, but the fans as well. listen, he knows this fan base is a rabid fan base. He does.
No, we're not.
A little overpassionate.
A little bit.
I mean,
but
we're freaking out about the sign at the link right now.
exactly.
Bye, Carson.
We don't say that name.
I think tone has a lot to do with it, Phil. And they tried to, I think with the draft, they tried to set a new tone. And only time will tell if that tone is actually going to be successful. I think that this draft class maintains a philosophy of like toughness and grit that wasn't prevalent in previous draft classes. In 2020, the team, they bet on athletes who tested well, like Jalen Reagor. Listen, he tested well. John Hightower tested well. Davion Taylor tested well. But the lack of killer instinct, that's what we saw, that lack of killer instinct from these individuals, from the rookies. And it kind of hurt the team in the short term. But this year, the draft class was all about killer instinct. So I bring that up because, again, I think that Howie is going to, Phil, try to change the tone a little bit here, and I think inevitably it's going to take some time. It's going to take more than one season, I think, and he's going to get more than one season. So that's where I'm standing on that.
Johnny, Jeff, any thoughts on that whole thought that we might see more Dillard and J-Jaw?
I know they don't like to give up on their highly draft picks, that give up right away. But if you have a guy like Mailata outperforming a first round draft pick, fortunately, what did Sirianni say? He wants competition.
Yeah.
So there's going to be competition. If a guy's beating, I know he may be a first rounder, and he doesn't hold positional versatility, which is something you can kind of see they want with the players they drafted. Players they drafted were guys that have positional versatility, guys that could play multiple positions. And Dillard does not do that, as we saw that back in 2019. And could that mean a trade? Possibly. But for me, I just feel they'll get a shot, but they're not going to have a super long leash. If someone outperforms them, they could be on the way out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, I was just going to say, Johnny, like, I completely agree with you. Like, I'm glad that there's going to be competition. I'm glad that Nick Sirianni is saying that. I'm glad he's not being like a Matt Nagy type and everything's screwed up for your team right off the bat. The competition aspect of this really is important because, again, it dovetails into the development that we are going to need to see from this team overall. And if it's the development of the left tackle, if it's the development of the number 2 running back position, if it's the development of the backfield, the safeties, like the competition is good. And if they happen to have to get rid of a number 1 draft pick, then he's gonna eat his words, of course. But if they have to do it for the development of this team, they're gonna have to do it.
I think for me, so I'm a middle school teacher, and I, for the past couple of years, have been doing competition-based teaching where, like, I put the kids in teams and they're competing constantly all day because competition breeds excellence. And we saw with we're going to switch. We saw with the Sixers a guy who was anointed as this great player who didn't want to compete. He would hand the ball off at half court. He wouldn't practice hard. He would foul to get out of the game. You see what people who don't want to compete look like, and it brings the whole team down. So by Sirianni saying we're going to compete every day, I can get behind that as a fan. And Johnny, to your point with the positionless offensive line, you can go all the way back to Jack Driscoll because he can play any spot on the offensive line. You look at a guy like Landon Dickerson, who, if we ever sign him, he can play a lot of spots on the offensive line. Samalu, a lot of spots on the offense. So that's been a long time theory of how to do offensive line. And in my opinion, it's the right theory because then you end up like the Kansas City Chiefs where one guy goes down and it wrecked your team for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought someone was going to ask a question, but yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to give you a chance here, Jeff.
Well, everyone keeps on chiming in. I can't get a freaking word in. I'm so
excited.
Is Party Doll Dave over there keeping you company?
Yeah, he's somewhere. But yeah, to the whole point of to Johnny's thinking that they're going to move on from Dillard if he loses out the spot. I don't see that happening. Look, this was an offensive line. The biggest part of that unit last year was the lack of depth. Whether Dillard can play or not, I don't see them moving a body like Dillard, a guy that they valued highly at one point, and a former first-round pick, even if he's going to be a backup. But
is it weird Is it like weird to have is it weird to have a first round offensive lineman?
It's not ideal.
Being a backup. Like, it's just, I can't remember the last time that's actually happened necessarily for an NFL team. Like, I'm talking about the fact that the guy never even started as a first round pick and to be potentially in the back, as a depth piece. Like, I just can't.
That's
so bizarre.
That's why I brought that question up, because
if
Dillard has a decent camp, even though Mailata earned the job last year. Mailata's got 3 years of professional football, college football, high school football, elementary football, pee-wee football. He's played literally 3 years of football, and he's earned that job. But Dillard, if he has a decent camp, Mailata's shown some ability to move around. He played right tackle a little bit, okay. Dillard, we moved him around. Peanut was checking in. Can he play guard? We tried Dillard at guard 2 years ago. It was a complete disaster. So if Dillard plays even remotely good, I could see them throwing him out there to A, get their value out of that pick, B, maybe be able to trade him down the line. If he plays well enough, you trade him.
Okay.
So I have a different take on that.
He earns that starting job, plays well enough, you move on from him, and then you've got Mailata as your left tackle. I'm just saying, I'm trying to think how Howie thinks. And we don't know how Howie thinks because it's this big jigsaw puzzle.
Right. So I have a different take on that because I'm actually worried that by putting him out there, you immediately lower his trade value. See, so right now, there is very little tape on Andre Dillard. Very little tape. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's really on his tape is he is a former first-round draft pick. So it's almost like you're buying a car sight unseen kind of thing. So if you're willing to trade for him, yeah, he's a first-round draft pick. He's great. If you put him out there and he plays as we are kind of fearing he's going to, his stock value plummets. So I almost go with the logic of trade him before even training camp starts. Get him, put him on someone else's roster. I don't see Andre Dillard turning into an all-pro, turning into a Hall of Famer. I'll cut my losses there. Trade him for something while you still can.
While you still can. All right,
it's a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's what it is. Andre Dillard is a no-win situation because I have a feeling, unless he absolutely knocks it out of the park, if he is completely dominant in training camp, then there we go. A first-round pick is finally starting. But if he just completely shits the bed and he is just relegated to either, being a depth piece, or if they try to trade him for a 7th-round pick or something like that. I mean, it's a no-win situation unless he does take that developmental step and becomes a starter.
You said no-win situation. Well, something we've talked about, we kind of don't want to talk about anymore, but it keeps popping up, is Zach Ertz. What's your thoughts on...
Oh, sweet Jesus.
And one of the new reports that Merrill Reed has unsubstantiated reports. He doesn't know where they came from, but he's going to Buffalo.
He found them underneath his laptop.
Yeah. Apparently, like Nick Fierro from the Morning Call, we've had him on our show before some time ago, said he talked to Merrill about it, and Merrill was like, I don't know why this is such a big deal. This was an interview that I had a week ago with him, and it's really nothing new. So I don't know. Guys, when it comes to Zach Ertz, dear God, I mean, it's just really sad what both sides have done here, although quite frankly, I'm more on the Zach Ertz side of things here. I always want to see players get paid. I always want to see players do well because they make a lot of money for ownership. And the Eagles certainly have paid him a lot of money over the years as a whole. And Zach Ertz has produced for this team in a lot of different ways. But I think it's a real indication of how Howie Roseman and the front office have operated in general, essentially, again, thinking that they're smarter than everybody else or just perhaps overthinking situations. And they put themselves into a bind like they have done here with Zach Ertz, where they look bad with the fans and they screw themselves with regard to the returns that they could possibly get for him. And it's a sad situation. I want the best for Zach Ertz based on what he has done over the years in Philadelphia, what he has done to his body, what his dedication to the fan base, his dedication to the city. And I think both sides have screwed up here, but I want to see Zach Ertz coming out on top of this one.
Another good question from one of our watchers right now. What do we think from what we've learned so far? The little in the interview process, the press conferences, the little bit of tape we've seen from practice. How's this offense going to be run? Is it going to be a pass-first offense like it's been for a while? Do we think we're going to get a little bit more balanced of an offense? We're going to be run-heavy. We do have like 75 running backs in the running back room right now. What, Jeff, what kind of offense do you think Nick Sirianni is going to run for Ryan watching on Facebook right now?
This Jeff right here?
Yeah, you can go. Yeah, you're Jeff.
Wait, hold on. Let me make it easy for everybody. Hang on. Go.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. There we go.
Now you're front and center. I really see your pretty face.
I'll start calling on people teacher style.
Oh, geez. I think we're going to see more pass heavy. I think that's what Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman want. They're into the passing analytics. They understand where the NFL is going. They understand that teams that essentially do win Super Bowls and do get to the playoffs from an offensive standpoint, they are more pass heavy, aside from maybe the Baltimore Ravens. But I think they're going to want to go pass heavy. I don't think they've invested 2 first-round picks in the wide receiver position to say that we really want to have that much more of a balanced attack necessarily. And listen, week to week, based on matchups, they could surprise us. They absolutely could surprise us. But I think they're going to be more pass heavy. And I think that's what Nick Sirianni does bring to the equation in terms of the experience he does have in the NFL so far.
I mean, I brought it up. I was on a show with Jimmy Smith on the road to victory on Monday night. And I was upset with Devontae Smith as a pick because I'm a defensive-minded guy. I love defense. Jim Johnson, Buddy Ryan, you're an older guy just like me, Jeff. These young bucks, here that I have to work with, they don't know what old smash mouth 80s football is. We do. Yeah. You know what I mean? And, I want a defense. But I also understand, like you said, where the NFL is going these days.
Yeah, the game's changing.
The NFL is not a defensive league anymore. That whole statement, defense wins Super Bowls, isn't necessarily a true statement 100% anymore.
Not 100%, but I do think it's important that you have a very, very stout defense in the playoffs. We see teams that are successful in the playoffs year after year after year who have very, very good productive defenses. And even those teams that do win Super Bowls, it's not 100%, like you said, Phil, but it's absolutely an important and imperative part of the play. Now, listen, Super Bowl 52, that was an anomaly. There was no defense to be had
at
all of the offense from the Eagles and the Patriots. Right. But that was, again, it was an anomaly. But you do need to have an extremely productive defense in the playoffs in order to get to that next level.
Yeah, and you talk there about you feel that the Eagles are going to go to a more to a more passing attack, and the big question mark going into this season is what do we have at the quarterback position? Look, we know Jalen Hurts is probably going in as the starter. He had a very small sample size last year, so we only can speculate what's going to happen this year. But the one thing that we need to worry about is as a fan base is how is the organization evaluating Jalen Hurts going to next offseason when we have 3 potential first-round picks and possibly a decent quarterback class? So my question to you is, what do you need to see from Jalen Hurts this year, in your opinion, for him to be brought back as the starter, as the franchise quarterback in 2022?
For him to be brought back, he's got to be a top 10. He's got to be a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. Okay. Do I think he's going to get there? I don't. My nightmare scenario, guys, and I don't know if you've thought about this at all. What if he's like the number 15 or number 16 quarterback at the end of the season? Mm-hmm. It's like, holy crap, what do we do now? Where do we go? That's the nightmare scenario for me. If he's like number 22, 23 or 24, I think exactly. I think we know the Jalen Hurts experiment after a year and a few games is done. But if he's like number 14, 15 or 16 at the end of the season, what the hell?
But see, this is the thing, and I've talked about this a bunch of times. Jalen Hurts has no excuses. They got him Devontae Smith. He's got Jalen Reagor. Even if somebody goes down on the offensive line, they got Dickerson. They have a deeper offensive line now. They have a deeper running back room. We don't have to worry about Adrian Killins being on the field this year.
There it was. I was waiting until you were going to get your first one in.
I had to say Adrian Killins joke once
29-minute mark.
At least once every time. But the way you say it, whether he's 14, 15, 16, the way you could judge that is you could look at Nick Sirianni. Was he 14, 15, 16 because of Nick Sirianni's play calling? Was he 14, 15, 16 because of his personnel decisions Sirianni was making? So I kind of think you can look at it on that end. Like if he's 20, 22, you move on. You know, I still firmly believe that if Deshaun Watson did not have his legal trouble, he'd be our starting quarterback right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, we have the assets to get Deshaun Watson. We're not making that move because of his, you know, his off the field issues.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, Hurts has no excuses unless Nick Sirianni is just a train wreck of a head coach. And I think Hurts has the potential that if Sirianni's a train wreck, Hurts could still be the 15th or 16th best quarterback because he's got that athleticism and that elusiveness and that ability to create something out of nothing. But on the flip side of the equation, once he hits that 20 or worse, just get him out of here.
Well, exactly. Go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, because I'm thinking about it. So we're willing to give Sirianni 2-3 years, but we're only giving Jalen Hurts 1. But Phil, you're saying it's because he's now got an offensive weapon. He's now got a couple functional offensive linemen.
Multiple offensive weapons.
I mean, does he though? Because
Jalen Reagor, first round pick.
But Jalen Reagor's done nothing to prove himself in the NFL yet. You know what I mean? Jalen Reagor's done absolutely nothing to prove himself in the NFL.
No training camp. You know, injuries galore last year. So he's still a first round talent, Jalen Reagor.
Right. But so we say that because we drafted him in the first round, not because we all believed he was a first round talent. Right? Because when that pick was made, when that pick was made, everyone went, wow, that was a huge reach. Right. Why are we picking him at 18? So I think for me, like saying, well, Jalen Hurts is definitely the guy because he's got, in reality, 2 rookie first-round wide receivers, when you count Jalen Reagor's what he got, a running back in Miles Sanders who took a decline last year, a number 2 tight end who is now having to step up to be the number 1 tight end, and an offensive line that hasn't played a whole game together, let alone a whole season together. So you're willing to give him 1 season, but Nick Sirianni gets 2.
I didn't say Nick Sirianni gets 2.
Well, they're not going to fire a head coach after 1 season. It's different between the quarterback position and a head coach. A little bit.
But you should at least give him the 2 of those guys together, right?
Conventionally, I think you have a point. Absolutely. Conventionally, I do. But guys, let's think about this. Wasn't the plan?
No.
The plan was a certain gentleman with the initial CW was going to be here for 10 years.
We don't mention his name on this show.
Exactly. Anymore. That's why I said CW. CW. That's why I said CW.
That word is benched.
But that was the plan. This wasn't the plan.
Right.
To have a second round quarterback being the starter this season. So now the plan of action changes, the strategy changes, the developmental year is now here. So they are able to use that and say, okay, can he develop this year? Can he develop into what we think that he was as a second round pick? So again, it wasn't the plan. So now they have to kind of, massage it and mold it a little bit, if that makes sense.
But you also have to look at it this way, though. If he takes a step, if he looks like something that they can mold and they can use going further this year, maybe he's not, I know you want to put a ranking on it, but you just look and see how they play, how they perform, how the offense looks under him, how these guys look. But you also have to look to the future of you have potentially 3 first-round picks in a draft that's going to be a lot deeper than last year's draft because a lot of guys went back to school. They took advantage of that extra eligibility. So you're going to have a deeper draft. So if he winds up showing you something, then you don't have to either use a couple of those premium picks to move up and get a quarterback or use those premium picks to get a quarterback with, of course, also a higher salary. And you also have to look at it that way because he's also on his rookie contract. If he shows you something, then there's more to it than just the draft picks. There's free agent signs. There's different things to improve the team. But you did get him weapons. And, what Phil was saying, though, is you went Devontae Smith, who was a Heisman Trophy receiver, one of the top playmakers in the draft. They got him. They had a guy from last year. They have a young running back. They have a young tight end. They have an offensive line. They drafted some guys on the offensive line. They have some guys coming back. So it's built for him. I understand that it's built for him, but if he needs to take a step, and I like Jalen Hurts, I think he can be it. I hope he can be it, but I'm on the side of I think he can do it. But again, we don't know. We got to see how this offense looks.
Yeah, I'm praying that he can do it. I hope he does it so that it is an interesting season. I really want Jalen Hurts to absolutely kill it this year. And I would love to see that and to put a lot of the detractors who actually think they do know him, to kind of put it to rest. Now, do I have the hope that it's going to happen? Not necessarily. I don't necessarily have the hope that's going to happen, but I want it to. I really do. I talked about the nightmare scenario that he comes in like 14, 15, or 16 quarterback in the NFL. The other nightmare scenario, guys, with regard to Jalen Hurts is that he gets hurt, say for like maybe 5 or 6 games. And then we got to deal with Joe Flacco or Mullins or whatever his name is. And and then there's still ambiguity going into 2022 about whether or not Jalen Hurts is going to be able to develop. Like an injury, a significant injury that keeps him out for 5 or 6 games. That's another nightmare scenario that I don't want happening.
We haven't actually brought that scenario up on this show yet, and
now I'm
depressed. Now I'm ready to go stick my head in a hole thinking about that.
See, I thought Nick Sirianni brought in a whole new training staff.
I'm hoping
a whole new way of doing practices and a whole new way of doing off-season conditioning. So I didn't even consider that the potential new franchise quarterback would get hurt in his developmental year. So thank you for that extra nightmare scenario.
Well,
I really appreciate that.
Well, we're kind of probably not expecting to get hurt after he played behind that horrendous offensive line last year, getting banged up. He didn't get hurt, so we're hoping he's
he only played 4 games
next year. Yeah, only 4 games. But one of our listeners, where was it, chimed in, and we know it's June, but he wants to know your early prediction on how many wins you feel the Eagles are going to have this upcoming season with Jalen Hurts.
He should know we don't do predictions till the week before the season on this show.
We're not going to have Jeff on the show for a while.
He's listened to this show enough times.
He's trying to get everybody's
predictions
opinion.
don't happen till week 1.
All things being equal right now, if this team won 7 games, I would be absolutely shocked. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. I would be absolutely shocked if they won 7 games. And frankly, it'd piss me off if they won 7 games because I want them to get a decent draft pick in the first round next year with their particular pick.
Jeff and Jeff both feel the same way about draft picks. He wanted us to miss the playoffs last year for the better draft pick.
I mean, I want the team to do well. Don't get me wrong. I want the team to do well, but this is not a year for wins. It's just not a year for wins. Again, it's a year of development, and you don't get wins when you're developing players. It just doesn't happen. But that's why we need to look to 2022 at this point, because I do think the future is promising. 2022, 2023 is going to be real interesting.
You talk about these young players. Let's dive right in because we don't have one poll question this week. We're at 48 minutes already. I don't want to take up 3 hours of your night, Jeff. So
I love talking to you guys.
Question 1, because we got 2, because one's not always enough. So we got 2 poll questions this week. So you talk about development and all this stuff. So the first poll question I did this week, and Jeff Warner, which one? Bottom Jeff, 283 votes. So it's a legit question.
Legitimate.
Legit. He says when I only get 70 answers, it's not legit. So we've got 283 votes on this one.
The backstory. I want your thoughts on this. We had a poll question because me and Chip both have customized jerseys with our own last names on it, and Phil basically told us it was a straight violation. He put up a poll question, and he only got 70 votes because I would say it told us one of 2 things. That one, people don't care about whether people have customized jersey, and why the hell is there a poll question? And 2, why are you doing this? So I want your thoughts.
70+% of the people voted that it's a violation.
Yeah.
Jeff, help me out here. It's a violation to have a name on your. If you had a Jeff Warren Eagles jersey, you wouldn't own that, would you?
I wouldn't.
I hope not.
I wouldn't, but I don't think it's a problem either. Listen, I saw one of the best personalized jerseys when I was at one of the public practices 2 years ago with my family, and it was a 0 and it said Wawa on it. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen.
No, that's good.
It was great. So I'm like, if you have that, then that's perfect.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so you get to answer the poll question of the week first here.
Okay.
So you brought up development and you brought up all these young players. So what Eagles player not named Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts would have just dominated this question. What Eagles player not named Jalen Hurts that has been here 3 years or less do you have the most faith in succeeding long term? And I put 4 options out there. Yep. Josh Sweat got 26% of the votes. Jalen Reagor got 15% of the votes, which I'm very surprised. Jordan Mailata blew it away with 56% of the vote. And then other was 3%. and I've got loads of names. I want to see what everybody else names first, and then I'll bring up some of the other comments. I am old school. I'm a Delco boy. You would not walk down the street in Delco with a personalized jersey on your back. You just wouldn't do it. You walk into Tom and Jerry's with that, you're going to get knocked up for that.
To be fair, if you walk into Tom and Jerry's at all, you get knocked up.
Yeah, that's another one. Okay.
Listen, the Jordan Mailata 55.8% doesn't surprise me at all with regard to this poll. It doesn't, because what we talked about earlier, he has displayed time and time again that he can be coached. Like he is a coachable type of player. He has shown us that as a fan base. But I'm gonna go with an other here, and I'm gonna say, and I think I can say because he was drafted in 2018. I'm gonna say Dallas Goedert.
You can say
I have incredible faith in Dallas Goedert. And yes, he's got some mighty big shoes to fill when we look at long-term Eagles tight ends. Brent Selleck, Zach Ertz, of course. I think the tight end magic has already been bestowed upon Dallas Goedert. His career, he's averaging 70% in terms of his catch percentage. This past year, his yards per reception was 11.4. I have a ton of faith in him long-term. And I'll also go back to a gentleman I was talking about a few minutes ago, and that's Kayvon Wallace as well. I have a feeling from a long-term perspective, I've got a lot of faith in him. Again, if those that are listening, go back and just on YouTube, look at some of the Kayvon Wallace plays out there. I mean, he was exceptional. So if I can have two, I'll go Dallas Goedert and Kayvon Wallace. But yeah, I'll go with Dallas Goedert.
Well, I had 14 write-in votes, and one person did say Dallas Goedert. Johnny, you don't get two, you get one. Where was your vote on this poll, Johnny?
I'm not going with any of the guys on there. I'm going other. I'm going Miles Sanders.
Yep. We had one vote. People forget he's only been here for 3 seasons.
Exactly. I understand.
I purposely made the poll 3 seasons or less instead of less than 3 seasons, so people can write in Miles Sanders.
But 5.3 yards per carry last year. It's just, I understand he wasn't used the way all of us clamored to use him more. I understand he had some struggles catching the ball. That's understandable, but I just feel that he's ready to break out. And long term, I think can be a franchise type running back to be able to do multiple things in an offense. And the way the Colts use the running backs, and Sirianni was there, so the way they used all their running backs, whether it was Jonathan Taylor, whether it was Nyheim Hines, and they get the most out of the running backs. And that's why I feel Miles Sanders is a really good selection with that.
Chipper, where did you vote on this poll?
So I hear everyone's saying, but there's a reason why Jordan Mailata got 56% of the vote.
Absolutely.
Because in a season where the offensive line was absolutely putrid, Jordan Mailata was the only guy who still gave his all the entire damn season. Right? And you saw example after example of Jordan Mailata booking his ass down the field and picking up the guy who had just gotten tackled.
That's a good point.
Going into the backfield, picking up the quarterback that had just gotten sacked.
He wasn't
because of players like Jamon Brown.
Yeah, he wasn't fixing his gloves.
Right, he wasn't fixing his gloves. So you look at again, the question is, who do you have faith in succeeding long term?
That's the key word.
Jordan Mailata doesn't know how to fail. Right? Think about the same things that you had already said. This is his 3rd year of professional football.
Yeah.
In 3 years of professional football, he became a quality left tackle. Imagine what will happen with another year under Jeff Stoutland, with another year of continuity along that offensive line. I think Mailata is the far and away winner, and everyone else is a distant second.
Okay. All about the birds, Jeff. I figured out a way to differentiate. All about the birds, Jeff. Where was your vote on this poll? Who do you have the most faith in?
I'll choose a different name. I was gonna go Booby because look, he's the guy. The last 2 seasons, even with the struggles along the offensive line, still had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. But you only declared that we couldn't pick Devontae or Hurts, correct?
I just said Hurts.
I say no. I'm saying Hurts and Smith.
That's my answer. Devontae Smith.
Okay, I'm gonna go Landon Dickerson. I just want to make sure rookies are still available.
Rookies. Yeah,
He's
I mean,
not
I don't know
even
if
on the team yet. We
I go
haven't
with
signed him.
Landon because he's got the injury history that he's coming off of.
But
on the flip side,
I feel the dude's. I feel he's gonna be recovered. Look, Kelsey can't play center for much longer. This dude's contemplating retirement every single season. Look, Dickerson, he brings you that versatility, and hopefully Brandon Brooks comes back at an All-Pro level that we expect him to. But if he's not, I would say you can see some playing time from Dickerson in his rookie year from either the left side or take over from Sayamalu, competing in camp. So, look. Dickerson, I would say he was considered probably the safest pick for the Eagles from a lot of experts in the draft. So I feel that, especially the offensive line and having Stoutland, a guy that has that credibility of developing offensive linemen. Look, the Eagles had a lot of success with Stoutland as the offensive line coach, getting talent in the later rounds. For them to get a talent like Dickerson with Stoutland, I expect him to be here for 10 plus years along that offensive line and be a very contributor, possibly an All-Pro.
If you don't mind me saying, I love the Mailata and the Landon Dickerson, like the comps with them in terms of their attitude. I think the selection of Landon Dickerson is signaled what the Eagles were really trying to accomplish with this draft class. They drafted another guy who plays every snap like the guy lined up in front of him is like his lifelong enemy. You know, I mean, he battles right through the whistle the same way that he battled back from multiple injuries. And when Landon Dickerson's on the field, he puts on a highlight reel for offensive linemen, for sure. So I think the Eagles bet on a winner with him and someone who's overcome adversity. And I think Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, man, they are going to be a formidable force on this Eagles offensive line in the future.
That's a great way to phrase it right there. That's the anchor of the line for the next 10 years right there.
Yeah.
I purposely left Dickerson and Smith off the list. You know, Twitter, you want engagement, you want people. I thought I would get so many people commenting those two names. I had one person vote for Devontae Smith and one person vote for Dickerson. I was blown away that only two people picked those two guys because I think I bash Howie on this show all the time. Howie nailed the draft with those first two picks. You know, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that worries me about the Dickerson pick is the injury. But he also, we still haven't signed him, correct?
We don't hear not signed Landon. But on the flip side of the equation,
is there a reason why?
He's probably holding because contracts. It's not financial because contracts are pretty much slated by position. But there's other things that they can put into contracts. So there's some holdout of some reason. He'll be here. He was at all the OTAs. If it was a serious issue, he wouldn't have been to the OTAs and rookie mini camps. He wouldn't have been there working out with the team. So
yeah, I don't think this was a Joey Bosa thing at all.
No.
Okay. I just know that he wasn't signed yet. So my question was, look, he's injured. I want to make sure that he's planning on playing, and let's sign the dude.
He'll be signed by July 27th or 28th, the first day of camp. Dickerson will be on the field practicing, fully signed and everything.
All right.
Yeah.
No doubt. All right, because one poll question wasn't enough. We kind of had a different kind of tweak on a poll question. It wasn't a poll question, just a question this week, and we didn't get to discuss this much last week. Chris Sims and his awesome top 40 list. Okay? I mean, it stunk. It was awful. Kelly Mond over Jalen Hurts. That's all you got to say. So I kind of put a different spin on it. I asked my followers to rank the 4 projected starting quarterbacks in the NFC East. You've got the Cowboys have Dak Prescott. The Washington football team has Ryan Fitzmagic. We have Jalen Hurts, presumably. And you got Donnie Jones out there in, East Rutherford, New Jersey. Guess Jeff. Rank those 4 quarterbacks in your opinion on how they're going to perform this year, but also like their overall, skill set and everything.
Guys, I look at this division of quarterbacks and none of them have proven a damn thing. And it is really sad. But if I gotta rank them, I'm gonna go with number 1, Dak Prescott.
Okay.
However, with Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield, because he is not as great of a quarterback when Ezekiel Elliott is injured and not on the field, or if Ezekiel Elliott is not playing up to that Zeke standard, Dak Prescott is not that great of a quarterback. He desperately needs a running back to help him with regard to the offense. Number 2 is Ryan Fitzpatrick for me. Listen, we follow football. He's almost thrown for 35,000 yards in his very, very long tenured career. Feels like he's been in this league for 38 years. I don't know. I'm going with him at number 2. Daniel Jones is number 3 for me, boys. And it pains me. It pains me. But in 2 years, he's got a 62.2 completion percentage, a rating of 84.1. And then Jalen Hurts obviously coming in at number 4. In just 1 year, just 4 games, and I know it's only 4 games, a 52% completion percentage, we know that, and a rating of 77.6. So I'm looking at the numbers here, but I'm looking again at none of these guys have proven a damn thing in the NFL. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he can come in and he can give you 4 games where he is absolutely unstoppable. And then the next 3 games, he's thrown like 8 interceptions, no touchdowns, and is a complete piece of garbage on the field. So there's a little bit of middle ground with Ryan Fitzpatrick as well, but there's just so much of nothing when it comes to the quarterbacks in this division that just haven't proven anything, and that's what I mean.
All about the birds, Jeff. Agree with that? Disagree with that?
Yeah, look, he hit the nail on the head. Look, this quarterback, this is like last year when we were talking about the NFC leagues. The quarterbacks shouldn't. Almost all these quarterbacks are at the bottom end of the league. So yeah. I agree with his assessment until Jalen Hurts or Daniel Jones can come in here and prove something. Look, when you did this poll question and people are having Jalen Hurts as number 1 or number 2, stop freaking being biased, Eagle fans. Look, Jalen Hurts has played in 4.5 games. Yeah, he showed some flashes, but overall, he showed that he's a developmental quarterback, that he needs developing, and he's not ready to come in and start, which hopefully Statland can get him ready for the season. So, yeah, probably higher ceiling when it comes to Jalen Hurts, maybe over Daniel Jones or some of these guys. But
Daniel Jones hasn't developed in 3 years or whatever it has been.
His rookie year, he had 24 touchdowns to 12
At least
Danny
Jones is, Danny Dimes has had years, and he still hasn't developed.
Well, you get to remember last year he was without his best weapon with Saquon Barkley. So they did get him Kenny Golladay this offseason. Barkley should be back. So, look, his rookie year, he had 24 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. Granted, it was a bad football team, but he at least produced, where Jalen Hurts, I think, had more turnovers than he had touchdowns in his 4.5 games.
Johnny, where would you rank the 4 quarterbacks in the NFC East?
So I have Dak number 1, just because if you're looking, and you're not looking at what they've done, you're kind of looking at what the team is around them plus their ceiling. Jeff mentioned, the ceiling of these guys. That's when you're putting these rankings, you're not basically going off of what they are. They're going off of what you think they can be. So for me, Dak is 1. He's got the offense around him. I have Hurts second. I know Jeff doesn't like putting him up there, but for me, if you look at Daniel Jones and Fitzpatrick, what has Fitzpatrick done the last 5 years? He's 16 and 25. He's 39 years old, and Daniel Jones, you can switch Jones and Hurts, back and forth. Jones looked better late at the end after he came back from injury last year, and he's 24 years old, so he's super young as well. But to me, Fitzpatrick, he's last. I understand he's a veteran. I understand that he can come in and he can help you, and he's 16 and 25 his last 5 years in starting football games.
That's bad.
He's not a winning quarterback. And like guest Jeff said, he'll have one great game. We saw it against the Eagles back in 2018. Has a hell of a game, and then all of a sudden he trips and falls and gets benched, and they have someone else in for him. So, for me, Fitzpatrick last, and then the middle you can switch, but Dak to me is number 1, just because it's almost like the elimination he's done. Probably the best out of all those guys, so it's hard.
Chipster, where you at? Any difference here? I mean, anything else unique to add to this conversation?
No, I do. I think there's a lot of so the problem is that there's a lot of asterisks that can get thrown in. So Dak is number 1, provided he comes back healthy.
Yep.
Right.
His ankle looked like this.
His ankle looked like a wishbone. Like it was awful. So provided he comes back healthy, Dak is far and away the number 1. Experience-wise, and the defensive team around him, Fitzpatrick is in a position to lead his team to the playoffs just by being okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? So that's why he goes in 2. 3 and 4, like Johnny said, is interchangeable, but you look at it as...
I said 2 and 3, not 3 and 4.
All right, well, I'm going Hurts and Jones are interchangeable. right? Hurts and Jones are interchangeable because Hurts had the high, like he played for Alabama and he played for Oklahoma. Like he played for these great schools. Jones played for Duke. Jones was a reach at pick 6 when he was drafted. He should not have been the number 6 pick in the draft. So by being a top 10 pick, he came with a lot of expectations. Has he played like a top 10 pick? No. He is just a mediocre quarterback. So that's why he falls to 4 for me. Hurts hasn't done enough yet. I think that Jones's arm strength is better. I think Jones's accuracy is better. I think that Hurts's athleticism is better. So for me, it goes Dak, if he's healthy, Fitzpatrick, and then 3A is Hurts, 3B is Jones.
All right.
And then Taylor Heineke at 5.
I don't have anything else to add to that because I agree with most of you. It's Dak. It's 1A, B, C, and D because they're all equally bad.
What are you going to do? Exactly. Like, what are you going to do? It's an unproven quarterback, division. You know, it's not good, but it's going to be interesting to see if some of these guys are able to actually develop, but specifically Daniel Jones, even Dak to an extent. Like, it's going to be interesting to see because, like, it's their division to lose this year. Inevitably, it's their division to lose. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, Jeff, Warren, Jeff. Thank you very much again for coming on our show tonight.
Guys, it was great talking to you. Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to talk birds here. The fact that there's 27 days left till training camp, I can't believe it. It's right around the corner. It feels like forever that this offseason. Exactly. It feels like this offseason's been taken forever with all the drama that we've been having to endure as fans. It's just great to be on here. You guys are doing a great job, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, we can only all hope to get to 8 years. The longest running sports podcast in the Philadelphia region. Jeff Warren from the Philadelphia Sports Table podcast. Again, thank you very much. The weekly report is brought to you by our sponsors, Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. 20% off with AAT Birds at checkout and free shipping. 99jerseys.com. AAT Birds 20 gets you 20% off. You get your Sugar Shane Falco. You can get your Kobe Bryant, Lower Merion jersey. You can get all your fun jerseys at their website. Make sure you check them out. OddsJam.com, their arbitrage calculator. I was talking on our golf show last night about OddsJam. Great stuff. It helps you not lose, basically, when you're betting. Our shop store at atbirds.com/shop and Statement Games. Fun, free fantasy game. Nice twist. I've been kicking ass on their website the past couple of weeks with the NBA playoffs and golf. I've been racking up wins on their website, so make sure you check it out. The links to all our sponsors in the bio of the show. And guys, as we end every show, Jeff, this is what we do at the end of every show. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Summer's coming. Are you ready to unveil your beach bod? You're in luck. Our friends at Manscaped just launched their 4th generation performance package, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Complement your summer bod with a trim from the leaders in male grooming. The sun is shining and calling your name, fellas. Join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for hot guy summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code AATBirds. It's time to bundle up with the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. First off, the new Performance Package 4.0 includes the Lawnmower 4.0. This trimmer is insane and, dare I say, the GOAT of ball trimmers. Yes, I said it. The 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor and a new multifunction on-off switch and can engage a travel lock and gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Not to mention, it's waterproof. Want to take your grooming game even further to the next level? The Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and ear. Seal the deal with Manscaped's liquids formulations. Before heading outside, use Crop Preserver ball deodorant to keep you on your game in the heat. Then, after trimming the lawn and whacking the weeds in the heat, give your beach balls a boost and use Crop Reviver.
Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0. Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Bring your comfort and boxers to another level. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code AATBirds at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code AATBirds at manscaped.com. Escape the shrubs and weeds this summer and shine with Manscaped.